Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for August 29th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to catch up on an email in the mailbag and discuss the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Soretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
I want to apologize to everybody. We put the podcast up, and if you downloaded the podcast yesterday, the Water Cooler podcast, in the first hour or so, one of the audio tracks was off slightly. You could still listen to it, but it was whatever. We fixed it within an hour, so hopefully you heard the correct version. But if you did not hear the correct version, that, an editing mishap just happened. Producing 5 shows a week, sometimes something falls through the cracks, and I apologize. It's totally my fault. But let's get into the mailbag. I just have one email here I wanted to read. This is from Jesse from Michigan. He writes in reference to the Disney streaming service price that we talked about. He says, everybody thinking that $6 was too low, you realize that other streaming services have to license the content, which is part of the price that you're paying for as the customer. Well, with Disney, they already own the content they're streaming. Any revenue from the service is just gravy for them. They don't need to charge an arm and a leg, and at that price, who wouldn't subscribe? I wanted to respond to this because I think a lot of people probably assume this to be true. But the thing you're missing here is when Disney starts a streaming service, they're pulling all their content off of other streaming services. And that includes Netflix. I know some people, I think UBS did a study on this, or did a report on this, and it came to Disney makes $2.6 billion off licensing their TV and movies to other platforms, which they probably are going to lose all that $2.6 billion each year by, putting it all in their streaming platform. And in addition to that, they're expected to spend another $800 million on original content for the service. So, combined, that's $3.4 billion that they are, at a loss from the previous year, just an investment for the streaming service. So, at $6 a head, they will need something like 45 million subscribers to be profitable, or to break even, rather. So that's a lot of subscribers. I assume that the price is going to go up at some point, but I wouldn't just assume that, everything is gravy. They, the stockholders are going to be pretty pissed off if they're only making a fraction of all that money that they made, licensing off their content to, HBO, Netflix, and even their Disney Channel shows and stuff. They license for $600 million to other services. So it's a pretty penny, and I'm sure they're going to break even. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. But I do think this service fee is probably a low introductory thing to get people subscribed, and eventually they're gonna have to raise it. But anyways, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
I'm surprised that they're only spending $800 million in original content, Disney, because I feel like Netflix is spending billions of dollars a year on original content, and that's supposedly their biggest competitor in this arena. So you would think that Disney would be coming out of the gate with a lot more money, right to start. But who knows? Well,
okay, this comes from that UBS study, and they estimate that they're going to do 4 to 5 movies per year at $50 million per film, and that they're going to do 4 to 5 series a year at $500,000 an episode for 13 episodes, and all that adds up to about $800 million. I mean, it could be that they're doing a lot more than that. I know this study that came out when they originally announced the service, they assumed that Disney was going to charge $9 for the service, and that it would take 32 million subscribers to break even. So, I mean, this is all estimates. We don't know any of the actual numbers. You could be right. They could be spending way more than that $800 million in original content each year. Yeah. So, HT, any thoughts?
I Not particularly. I mean, I am a little surprised at the only was it 800 million, 80 million, I'm sorry.
800 million.
800 million.
Yeah.
Because there are some feature films that they're producing for the streaming service as well, such as Lady and the Tramp, which I felt like would be slightly higher priced, but maybe not.
Well, you also have to consider, like, do you think, Netflix doesn't market their movies that much? I mean, I do see some billboards in LA and stuff, but like from an overall view of people I talk to, it doesn't seem like they see advertising for Netflix movies and TV shows that often. Do you think Disney, when they, produce these original movies like Lady and the Tramp and Magic Camp and all those things for this streaming service, do you think we're going to see trailers on TV, like TV spots and stuff like that? Or do you think like it's going to be like Netflix where it's just going to be advertisements for, the product, the streaming service as a whole?
That's a good question. I feel like Disney's marketing machine is just so strong that they'll probably stick to their traditional route of doing trailers for these movies. And I feel like Netflix's one vice is that they don't market their films. They just spend billions on incurring as much content as possible. So I feel like Disney could get a leg up by actually marketing these films because they do put the work into it.
Yeah, it's just I'm thinking usually if you make a $50 million movie, you're spending $40 million on advertising to make to get people to go see that movie. But with this changing business models, who knows what's going to happen? We'll have to keep an eye on it. Those are only the estimates, as I said, but there is a lot of money invested in here, even though they already own all the content. Okay, guys, let's talk about the news. The first story on our list is kind of breaking news. Yesterday we learned that Alec Baldwin was going to join the Joker movie as Bruce Wayne's father. But just as we started to record this podcast, that came into some doubt. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so Alec Baldwin was originally cast to play Thomas Wayne in Todd Phillips' upcoming film, which is just called Joker, that stars Joaquin Phoenix in the title role. And Baldwin just told USA Today, "I'm no longer doing that movie," and he's blaming scheduling issues as the reason for that. So I mean, this is kind of a strange turn of events here, because Alec Baldwin, I mean, it's very rare that you'll see a casting announcement go out and then within a day an actor immediately drop out or just straight up deny being a part of a project like this. So he said, "I'm sure there are 25 guys who can play that part." And there had been some discussion about Thomas Wayne, who is the father of Bruce Wayne, who plays who is the character of Batman in these movies. There had been some discussion about this version of Thomas Wayne in this movie being a cheesy and tanned businessman who is more in the mold of a 1980s Donald Trump. And Trump, of course, is one of Baldwin's characters that he plays on Saturday Night Live. So I was saying, in the original incarnation of this, when we thought that Baldwin was actually going to be playing this character, I thought that was in keeping with what this movie has been doing. That casting was very on the nose, but it seems like something has just fallen apart in the last minutes here. Peter, what do you make of this?
I don't know what to make of this, because we had this weird tweet from Alec Baldwin this morning being like, "I'm not in this movie," and people weren't sure if he was joking or what was going on. I mean, I don't know. I like the idea of Alec Baldwin as Thomas Wayne. What do we know about Thomas Wayne's role in this movie? Do we know anything at all beyond the Trump-esque take on the character?
No, not really. I mean, in the comics, he was, a wealthy sort of philanthropist, and he and, of course, Martha Wayne get murdered after exiting a theater, and he dies right in front of young Bruce Wayne, and that sort of provides the jumping off point for the origin story of Batman. So I assumed that we were going to see Thomas and Martha Wayne get gunned down in the streets again in this movie, even though we've seen that particular sequence play out in almost every Batman property that has existed in the past few years. So yeah, I don't know. We don't know about what level of role this was supposed to be, or how it was going to factor into the story, which is largely based on the comic The Killing Joke, and it's supposed to be sort of like a dark mid-budget crime drama instead of an out and out traditional superhero movie.
HT, are we missing out on Alec Baldwin playing a Trump-esque character yet again on in media?
Oh, I very much dislike that description of that character because it felt like very antithetical to what Thomas Wayne was, at least in the comics and in like Batman's sort of legacy, in terms of just like inspiring Bruce Wayne to take on the mantle of Batman, because he was always a doctor and philanthropist who was trying to do well and use his wealth to, aid Gotham's economy. But when I heard this news, I remember thinking that I felt like they were tying it into sort of the origin story that we saw in Tim Burton's Batman, in which the Joker was the one who killed Thomas and Martha Wayne. So I was wondering, like, are they going to go for some sort of different origin story with Bruce Wayne? Is Thomas Wayne going to be somewhat more involved in the mob underbelly of Gotham, or is somewhat involved in the Joker story? So this is a very strange turn of events, and I don't really know what to make of it.
I mean, I do like the idea that the Wayne family was in some way responsible for the Joker rise. That there is this parallel between Batman and the Joker. I also, I know, Ben, you're mocking the fact that they could potentially show the assassination of Bruce Wayne's parents again on film, but I think it would be cool to see that in a different perspective. We're seeing it from the Joker's perspective, right? And we're seeing it in, a entirely different context of a story, where that is not the starting point of something. That's probably like in the climactic events of the story, I would assume.
You could be right, and I think The Killing Joke, the character of the Joker is like a failed stand-up comedian, and we know that they're keeping that conceit alive for this movie, and he sort of gets roped into a life of crime because he's so bad at his stand-up job that he has to take this crime job in order to support his family. And so I'm wondering if maybe Joaquin Phoenix's character is going to be the one who is roped into actually killing the parents. Like, we've seen that the Joker was the person who executed Thomas and Martha Wayne in Tim Burton's Batman movie, but it's been a lot of different characters over the years, like Joe Chill and all these other characters like that. In the Nolan verse, it was Joe Chill, and in the comics as well. So I wonder if, like you're saying, Peter, if that's an opportunity for like Joaquin Phoenix to play this sort of like haunted guy who really regrets being boxed into having to kill these people, even though that's not something that he wants to do. And that would be a good way for them to show us that scene from a different angle that we haven't seen before.
Oh, for sure. And one thing, when you were just talking about him playing this comedian character, I was just wondering, Joaquin Phoenix is kind of like one of those method actors. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah.
Do you think we'll see like Joaquin Phoenix end up showing up at like these like open mic nights, like, just in character trying to, find his role? Do you think that's a possibility?
That's interesting. But I mean, I think that the thing is he's supposed to be bad at it. And so I don't know
if he's showing up to these open mic nights to completely bomb on stage.
On purpose, maybe.
Yeah, in disguise, so people don't know it's Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know. If I was you and I was in LA and you're interested in this movie, you're a DC fan, I'd be sleeping outside all these open mic nights for the possibility of that happening. I'm joking. Okay, let's move on to a bit of Amazon news. News that Amazon might develop original movies alongside some studios, and the possibility of them adding ads to their streaming service. HT, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Yes. So when we talk about Amazon, we mean Amazon Prime, because as we know, Amazon Studios has been distributing award-winning acclaimed films for the past few years now. But Amazon Prime has been sort of trailing behind in terms of like Netflix, for example, for its original movies, although its original shows have had their own acclaim with such as shows like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Transparent. So Amazon is reportedly talking to major Hollywood studios such as Sony, Paramount, to create films for its streaming service. But these talks are still in the early stages. No agreements have yet been reached. But apparently, Amazon is looking for a new opportunity to exploit existing studio IP. So in this case, they want to sort of replicate the success that Paramount had with the Cloverfield paradox in terms of the deal that they struck with Netflix, which is a win-win for both companies. Paramount avoided a box office bomb, and Netflix got lots of word of mouth, which is their favorite thing. So apparently Amazon is looking to sort of make some sort of similar deals, perhaps save maybe some potential studio bombs for their streaming service. Amazon Prime in particular, but potentially a new one, which is the second part of the story. So Amazon is reportedly looking into creating a new ad-supported video service that will be available exclusively on Fire TV. So this isn't Amazon Prime, which will be getting the ads, but a service tentatively titled Free Dive, and it's being developed through Amazon's IMDb subsidiary, and will likely feature quote-unquote older TV shows, in which Amazon is currently in licensing talks with studios as well.
Let's hope it doesn't use that dreaded IMDb video player, which is just horrible. I don't know. I think this is interesting, this whole Amazon developing original movies with studios, because this is like, I'm not sure if people know this, but that are listening, but the way television works is like, Warner Brothers will make a TV show and then sell it to, CBS to air. So Warner Brothers is producing it, CBS is distributing it. We see that a lot in TV where like there's these cross studio productions, but we really haven't seen that in film. I guess we see, studio partners like Blumhouse, are making films alongside the studio that they're, officed with, but we don't really see, Amazon hiring Sony to develop original content for their platform. That's a little different than what we've seen in the past. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm not sure that I can fully wrap my head around this, because I feel like wouldn't the natural thing be for Amazon Prime to partner with Amazon Studios? I guess maybe Amazon Studios just doesn't release the type of content that they're looking for. Is that the underlying thing here? I'm not sure why they wouldn't just team up with themselves.
Yeah. Because Amazon Studios films already get Amazon Prime releases after their theatrical releases, of course.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it's that they're looking for IP. Maybe they want, to approach like Paramount to do like a Transformers spin-off just for Amazon. That's the only thing I can think of that like an outside studio could provide them that their own studio is not capable of. I guess that's the case of the Cloverfield paradox, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what do you guys think of this free Amazon streaming service? Ben, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I don't have Amazon Fire, but I like the option. I like the idea of the option being out there for people. I think that's, I used to watch Hulu years ago before they went to like the subscription thing where you have to pay for it, and I always thought that was kind of cool. Like, yeah, you have to put up with ads, but that's, it's one more place for. It's a way for like the democratization of content to be spread out among everyone. So I think that's a cool option. And of course, like, yeah, you can pay for a different service if you don't want any ads on there. But yeah, I like the idea in theory.
HT, would you watch a advertised supported Amazon streaming service?
Actually, I think it's not a bad idea, because currently Amazon Prime you can only get through the entire Amazon Prime package. And I like the idea
which has
of having
become expensive over the years.
It's very expensive, and while like the delivery fee is like really good, sort of like partnership with that, I think the idea of having a streaming service on its own is a really good idea, especially on a device like the Fire Stick, which is so cheap, and it could rival other devices like the Roku, for example. And I don't mind ads. I'm probably one of the few millennials who doesn't mind them. I kind of just zone out a lot during them. It's actually a good time to like check your phone, which is another sort of millennial thing. But I don't mind them. Like even on Hulu when I'm watching shows and they go back to like the old old school commercial breaks. It doesn't really bother me that much.
See, I don't know. That's where I think I differ. And probably for the same reason you like ads is the reason why I don't like ads, because it takes me away from the experience, and I usually get sidetracked in, like, looking at my Instagram or Facebook or whatever on my phone, and then when it comes back on, I'm distracted. I don't know. I just feel like I have such limited time nowadays that when I'm spending my time on entertainment, I would rather just, pay the premium. Like I've talked in the past, I pay for the YouTube premium to skip the ads on YouTube videos. I actually pay for the Hulu, the premium Hulu, to skip the ads on Hulu. So I'm not beyond paying more to skip ads. I like that services offer that. But it sounds like this one won't, or will this, because this doesn't sound like it's going to be a free version of Amazon Prime, right? It's something different?
It's something different, but it's still very early in talks. I'm not sure exactly what it will encompass.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Rotten Tomatoes. News comes that they are adding new voices to the Tomatometer, focusing on inclusion and new media platforms. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Rotten Tomatoes put out a press release yesterday saying that they have revamped their criteria to allow different critics to come on board and have their voices count toward the Tomatometer, which is, as everyone probably knows, the basically like the aggregation of critical opinion about a movie. And it's not necessarily like the a pure representation of how much everyone likes a movie. It's just a collection of opinions measuring whether critics find a film fresh or rotten. I have a lot of personal gripes with Rotten Tomatoes as an organization, but the idea that they have opened their doors, they recently just accepted over 200 new Tomatometer approved critics, and they're now including podcasts and digital video shows as a platform that can be acceptable for people to contribute to that Tomatometer. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Rotten Tomatoes as an organization because of like what they have done to the idea of film criticism, which I feel like the larger community, people generally, I'm speaking very generally across the population here. I feel like people just, go and look at the number and make their decision that way instead of actually engaging with written reviews or any sort of a critical analysis of a movie. Rotten Tomatoes has sort of streamlined it down into and simplified it into this one single thing, and that number is very important still for studios and critics and filmmakers. But yeah, the idea that they're opening their doors and sort of letting all of these new voices come in, this is actually benefits freelance film critics, which is really great because a lot of times in the nature of freelance, you're publishing in a bunch of different publications, so you can't necessarily find the consistency that the Rotten Tomatoes used to require for you to be accepted into their ranks. So this is a really cool thing. I mean, it gives people more of a voice, and it actually gives that number that I'm not so crazy about. It makes it more reflective of the general, like the diverse, all these diverse views, instead of just being old white men who write for newspapers,
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes has been very stringent on who they have accepted into their platform for many years. Slash Film wasn't a part of Rotten Tomatoes until I think last year. The Slash Film cast, because it was a podcast, has been running for 10 years now and has not been accepted because they didn't accept podcasts until now. And they're now going to be part of the Tomatometer, which is exciting. I don't know. I do get why people don't like Rotten Tomatoes and what it has done. But in the end, I don't think any of these people that are going to Rotten Tomatoes to look at this number are people that would have engaged in reading reviews, or, they would have clicked on a review and went to the bottom to see the rating or whatever. I don't think the people that are looking at the number only are the type of people that are missing out on anything they would have. I do think Rotten Tomatoes is good because generally, when something is fresh, it is a good movie worth watching. And if it has convinced these people that are not willing or interested in engaging in film criticism to seek out better movies and not see bad movies, I think that's a good thing. And now, as you say, it's going to be more inclusive, more diversive sampling, which helps out in the end. HT, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think this is a really good move on Rotten Tomatoes' part because they're basically, taking action with their influence base. They're acknowledging the influence that they have and using that to a better goal in terms of diversity and media criticism. So I like this move a lot, and I hope that it will make them be more, it's a sign of them being sensitive to what kind of actions they make, because they are quite a powerful force, I think, in the media industry.
Yeah, do you ever think, I think the real danger of Rotten Tomatoes is the binary approach of it's either good or it's not. It's either fresh or it's rotten. Do you think that they will ever adapt to, I know that if you go to any given, film page on there, you can actually see what the average film rating score is, but it's kind of hidden. Do you think they'll ever adapt a more kind of diverse scoring offering, or do you think they're always going to just stick to this fresh rotten approach?
I think they'll probably stick to the fresh rotten approach because it's worked for them. It's kind of what they're famous for. But I do wish they would make it more clear and easier to go through to the actual reviews themselves and see what those individual scores are. So yeah, I think that would benefit their sort of reputation in general. But I agree with you, Peter. I think that Rotten Tomatoes is best as more of a launching pad and a way to find out about the specifics of individual reviewers.
I do wish, Rotten Tomatoes is making so much money off all the work of all these reviewers. I do wish that they would, invest in a recommendation engine of if I go on Rotten Tomatoes and I say I like this movie, and this movie, maybe it would then recommend critics that also are, share my view. And then there'll be a section on there of critics that are have similar opinions. So then I can now find tastemakers that might align with what I'm looking for in movies.
That's a really cool idea, and the work is already done on their part because all of the critics' ratings are already logged in their system. So it would just be basically creating a search. I'm not a website engineer, so I don't know exactly how you would do that, but it sounds like it would be relatively easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's how all recommendation engines are built on. Of if person A likes A, B, and C, and person B likes A, B, and C, then you recommend what person C also likes. It's usually what they do with movie recommendation engine, but instead of recommending the movies, you could be recommending the critics as well as the movies. I think.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. I should pitch it to Rotten Tomatoes. I shouldn't have put it on this podcast. Now I'm losing out on all that money. Let's move on to news that Michael Jackson's Thriller in 3D is getting an IMAX theatrical release. HT, what do we know?
So on the heels of Michael Jackson's birthday, which is today, happy birthday, Michael Jackson in heaven. The IMAX and Michael Jackson Estate have announced that they're teaming up to release the digitally remastered Michael Jackson's Thriller 3D in IMAX theaters this September for a week, starting September 21st, 2018. And these showings of the Michael Jackson Thriller 3D will show ahead of Eli Roth's The House with a Clock in Its Walls. And this is following the premiere of this remastered version at the Venice Film Festival last year. And this will be the second sort of theatrical release of this short film after it was first released in theaters in 1983.
The House with the Clock in Its Walls is an hour and 45 minutes long, so adding this on makes it about a 2-hour experience, plus, trailers. Sounds about right. I loved Thriller when I was a kid. I've never seen it in 3D on the big screen, so maybe this is going to get me to actually go see the new Eli Roth movie. Ben, are you going to go see it to see Thriller on the big screen?
I feel like that's just sort of an added bonus because that movie, I mean, I'm very hit or miss when it comes to Eli Roth films, but that movie kind of looks like fun. It's Jack Black and Cate Blanchett vamping it up with in a young adult magic story. I mean, sign me up. I'm there.
I'm on Ben's side too. I'm actually quite excited for this movie. It looks so fun and silly and very anti-Eli Roth. But I'm very excited to see both of these together because I feel like they're the perfect sort of Halloween pairing.
Okay, let's move on to our next story. That is that Wile E. Coyote is going to get his own movie. Ben, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Warner Brothers is developing a movie called Coyote versus Acme, and we really don't know much about this. We know that it's a Wile E. Coyote movie. The character obviously is famous from the Looney Tunes cartoons where he was chasing around the Roadrunner, always trying to eat him, and then using Acme products, which is this fake company, and all these products, of course, would just like explode or be faulty in some way. And of course, the coyote would basically just, fall into a chasm or explode in some way. And yeah, I mean, it's a very famous character. We don't know exactly what the story itself will be about, although Chris Evangelista, who wrote this article about this, found out that there was a writer named Ian Fraser who wrote a collection of humorous essays called Coyote v. Acme. And in the book, there is a story about the opening statement of an attorney representing Wile E. Coyote in a product liability suit against the Acme Company, supplier of unpredictable rocket sleds and faulty spring-powered shoes. So it sounds like it might be like a courtroom drama where Wile E. Coyote is suing this company who has always just, been screwing him over for years as he's been trying to kill the Roadrunner. So that would be kind of cool if it turned out to be something like that. And maybe you could have it where it's like, I don't know, like The Social Network, where it's like a courtroom thing is happening on one layer, and then there's like flashbacks that are, to each of the individual instances or scenarios where these products screw up.
What is going on here? Is this an animated film?
I don't even know the answer to that. I know that John and Josh Silberman have been hired to write, and they have worked on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Border Town. A show called Zack Stone is going to be famous. And we know that Chris McKay, who is the producer of the Lego movie and the Lego Batman movie, is going to be on board as a producer here. We're not sure who's going to be directing it or like what style of movie this is going to be, because I think the Looney Tunes have appeared, I mean, obviously in Space Jam in like a live action hybrid capacity before. So it wouldn't be unprecedented if they did something like that this time.
McKay's involvement makes me think that, it might be animated. I don't know. This is so strange. I do think Warner Brothers has kind of dropped the ball in, doing Looney Tunes movies. I know we did a story a little bit a few months back that they're bringing back Looney Tunes shorts, I think for television or something. But I don't know. I just feel like Looney Tunes could have been to Warner Brothers what, Mickey and all those characters are to Disney. And I feel like Warner Brothers has kind of, kept them locked up on the lot for the most part, other than, Saturday morning cartoons. But by the way, this just in, a bunch of release date news just hit. The Top Gun sequel, Maverick, has been pushed from July 2019 to June 2020, and A Quiet Place sequel has been dated for May 15th, 2020. I guess there's probably not much to talk about there, but I thought I'd mention it since it broke while we were on the air. Let's get to our last and final story because we are running a little late on this podcast, and that is that First Man has had its first screenings, and the early buzz is through the roof. HT, you did a roundup of all the reviews and all the reactions. What are people saying about First Man?
Yeah, so Damien Chazelle's latest movie, First Man, debuted at the Venice International Film Festival, and critics are over the moon for it. No one laughed at that. Okay.
I was on mute. I was laughing on mute.
Okay. So critics are calling it a revelatory and spectacular drama. Variety's Owen Gleiberman called it a space drama that makes Apollo 13 look like a puppet show. The playlist calls it it's a giant leap for the Apollo 11 mission and a satisfyingly old-fashioned epic that may well become the definitive moon landing movie. People are praising Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy's performances. Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong in this biopic. And generally, everyone is just universally praising this film. A few people are somewhat divided on the sort of dizzying in-your-face editing that this film employs and some of the more visceral set pieces. But overall, people are really really positive about this film.
I am so excited for this film, especially after seeing that IMAX preview that I talked about previously on Slash Film Daily. I am a little curious how, there isn't really a lot of drama with this mission. And I'm really wondering what like the climactic sequence of this movie is. But I'm glad to hear that people are digging it. Ben, are you excited for First Man?
I'm very excited, but I'm also, like you, very curious as to, like the drama is this mission going to work, because it's based on a true story and we know that it does. And it's not even like Apollo 13, where it's like you may have heard about the story, but seeing the actual bones of how they managed to fix their problems out in space and figure out a way to get back to Earth is like the interesting part of it. It's like, I'm a little concerned, or not concerned, but curious about like what exactly the dramatic tension or conflict might be in this movie. But I'm very excited. I've been excited ever since it was first announced, and hearing these reactions is makes me look forward to it even more.
HT, how about you?
Yeah, I'm very excited for this film. I'm kind of hit or miss with Damien Chazelle. I really enjoyed Whiplash, and I felt like, while I was entertained by La La Land, I felt like it was sort of, it was definitely a little derivative, and sometimes at points felt more homage than movie. But I am really excited for this film because it kind of has him stepping away from his jazzy roots. And I'm really intrigued by people's descriptions of this sort of more visceral tone. It kind of reminds me of what the reactions to Dunkirk were, and like how that kind of played over as a war film, in that it was more about the experience than anything. And I've read the descriptions saying that it's more about setting you in the mind of Neil Armstrong, and like that really claustrophobic atmosphere and experience that he has while being launched into this like tiny space tin into the moon. So I'm wondering if that'll be the case, and I'm really excited to see it.
I mean, definitely what you're describing is what I saw in that IMAX preview, which just has me so excited for this film as a space geek. Anyways, that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. HT, where can we find more of your work online?
You can find me writing every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at htranbui.
Ben, where can we find your work?
I am at slashfilm.com as well, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears.
You can find me at slashfilm on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps, as well as slashfilm.com. Please, if you have any questions for us in the mailbag, or just comments, concerns, feedback, send it to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And as always, leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. Please go rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.